friend. I know I've been gone for a few weeks, but we're back as we can continue with Nancy Drew Whispers in the Fog. Chapter 15, The Scrap of Evidence. The harsh bright light made Nancy blink. Adrenaline seemed to electrify her as she stood face to face with Joan Kim. Miss Drew, the tall, attractive woman said. She was dressed in a purple silk jumpsuit and held one hand behind her back. Frowning, she stepped inside the door and shut it behind her. Nancy looked around quickly. They were in a small dining room, perhaps an area used for entertaining clients or guests. There were 3 round tables set with linens, cloths, and napkins. In each of the table, there were 2 silver candlesticks and a silver salt and pepper shaker. I had heard you were very skillful, Joan Kim continued. It appears my sources were correct. You have managed to thwart my crew's best efforts to keep your activities restricted. How do you know who I am? Nancy asked. She needed to stall the woman until she could figure out what to do. Behind Kim's shoulder, Kim saw a window into the hall. The light was so bright in the room, she could barely see through the window. Instead, she saw a reflection of the room itself. I have amassed quite a following, Miss Firestone. I know who her friends are and who her enemies are. I've had people try to frighten her into giving out of business. I followed her myself on occasion. I even followed you one evening, Kim's lips stretched into a slim smile, on the bluffs in the cypress grove. That's right, Joan Kim said with an eager nod. I was in town anyway, preparing for my speech in the diner. When I saw you all fly in your bicycles, I assumed Miss Firestone was with you, so I followed you on the bluffs. As Joan Kim talked, Nancy inched her upright. Kim instinctively moved also until she stood partly in front of the window. In her reflection, Nancy got the information she was seeking. Kim held a gun behind her back. Now Nancy knew her only hope was to surprise and decapitate her at the same time. When I discovered Miss Firestone was not one of the bikers, Joan Kim continued, I changed my plan slightly and chose you as my target. I thought it might give you something to think about. I checked with some of my sources about you, she continued. You have quite a reputation in some places for being a detective. You proved today for here what you are. Do you know what the sentence is for kidnapping, Miss Kim? Nancy asked. It is of no interest to me because we will not be here much longer. When you arrive at our destination, you will be released, so there will be no more kidnapping. Where are we going exactly? Nancy said. Across the Pacific, Kim said in a clipped voice. Yes, I have business there. Does this business have to do with the whale calf in the pool below? Nancy asked. She could hardly keep her anger out of her voice when she thought of the captive creature. So you took a tour, Kim said. Her eyes flashed at Nancy. Very well, I'll share my plans with you. You can do nothing about them. I have a large and lucrative business. I own ships around the world and capture whale calves to settle our clients. Isn't it legal to capture a migrating calf? Nancy asked. She was standing near one of the tables. She shuffled off her feet, each shuffle moving her back an inch or 2 until she felt the edge of the table against her hip. She reached back and leaned to the table. What do your clients do with them? Nancy asked, not sure she wanted to hear the answer. It's not my concern, Kim said with an offhand gesture. Some were put in zoos or films or other such attractions. Some were probably eaten. Ugh. As Joan Kim spoke, Nancy reached back until her fingers closed around one of the salt or pepper shakers. Easing it toward her, she simultaneously began twisting it off the top. The lid fell onto the tablecloth. Nancy dipped her finger into the shaker. Her heart leapt with elated rush when she felt its contents. It had a powdery, not a grainy feel. Good, I got the pepper, she thought. She picked up the open door and she picked up the open pepper shaker and held it carefully under the back of her sweater. This is why I'm firm to keep whale watching businesses and tourists they attract out of my way. So you are the one responsible for all the trouble Kate has been having, Nancy said, pouncing on her opening. Joan Kim looked at Nancy. She didn't seem to notice that Nancy had moved back a foot or two. But she wasn't discouraged, Kim said, and you weren't either. You just kept coming. You should have been far more aggressive on the bus. Now I wouldn't have to deal with you and your friends right now. Where are the other two, by the way? And you, or someone working for you, saw the axle on Bess's bike, right? Nancy said, trying to keep the one distracted talking, and vandalize Katie's boat. The woman seemed to be taken back by Nancy's word. Bicycle axle, she repeated. I know nothing about that. And I didn't do anything to Miss Firestone's boat. I considered it, but someone beat me to it. She took a couple of steps toward Nancy and then stopped. No more questions for you, she said. Only answers. Where are your friends? Do you not know I found your horse's head buckle? Nancy asked abruptly, hoping to get her captor off guard. Joan Kim's expression softened to beat me. My buckle? Where'd you find it? It's one of my favorite pieces. Give it back to me now. I found it in the sea cave next to the offshore holding pool, Nancy said. Yes, Kim said with a smile. I sometimes go there for solitude and peace. A few weeks ago, I took an unexpected spill from my canoe. Where's my buckle? Her eyes were open with anticipation. Keeping a pepper shaker under her water, Nancy pulled her hand around the front. With both hands under her sweater, she pretended to be unbuckling the belt. Then with one quick, sure gesture, she pulled off the shaker from underneath her sweater, leaned toward her, and dashed the contents into Joan Kim's face. Then Nancy reached back immediately and grabbed a candlestick from the table. What have you done? Her left arm came back from behind her back, but her eyes were clenched against the pepper. Nancy was ready for her, slamming a candlestick into the woman's arms with a solid blow. Then the gun flew across the room, landing a soft, easy chair in the corner. Joan Kim doubled over. Her left arm was a huge limp. Her right hand swiped frantically as the pepper dust blew on her face. As Nancy grabbed her arms, the woman tried to fight, but she was stunned by the pepper. Tears rippled out from her eyelids and rolled in the streaky patterns down from the black glaze speckles covering her cheeks. Her nose ran. She tried to yell for help. But with every breath, she inhaled more pepper. The only sounds that came out were gag squeaks and coughing spasms. Within minutes, Nancy had tied Joan Kim to a heavy radiator against the wall. She tied the bandana around her mouth and gag. She didn't pull it too tight because the woman was still having trouble breathing. Just being around Joan Kim made Nancy's eyes sting. So she held her breath as long as she could and moved quickly. She took the keys from Kim's pocket and then checked out the room for a phone. There was none. She slipped the ammunition cartridge out of the gun and into her pocket, left the room, and locked the door. Out in the corridor, Nancy took a few breaths and listened deeply. For anyone who might be nearby. Hearing nothing, she made her way back down the hallway to a door leading to an open deck. She looked through the glass door and saw Ned and Bess at the far end of the deck. They were standing very still, not talking. In front of them, his back to Nancy, was a man. She could tell by their postures that the man was probably armed. Nancy looked around the deck for something she could use to help her friends. Her eyes stopped in a metal basket by the railing. Yes, she said under her breath, that's it. She opened the door very slowly. Bess and Ned saw her, but they immediately focused back on the man without giving her away. Nancy heard Ned start a conversation to distract the man. Nancy stepped on the deck and closed the door slightly behind her. She inched over to the metal basket. Inside was an emergency flare gun and cartridges like the one Katie had given her. She picked up a large flare gun and opened the muzzle. She placed the cartridge inside, pointing the flare up and pointing the air. With a whistling surge, the flare arched through the fog and exploded into the fireworks. When the flare's whistle began, Nancy ducked behind a stack of coiled copies. The man at the end of the dark of the deck whirled around, but Ned butted his head into the man's back and knocked him in the ground. Well, Nancy set off another flare. Ned knocked the man out with one perfect punch and tied him up. Through the fog, Nancy heard the continuous honking siren of the Coast Guard. Soon she saw the boat coming toward the ship. "Are you two okay?" Nancy asked. "Yeah," Bess answered, "but we were worried about you." "I'm fine," Nancy said, "and you'll be happy to hear that Joan Kim is wearing the smelly bandana." "Whoa," Ned said. He ran into her. "You could say that. I'll tell you about it later. It looks as though we're about to be rescued." Nancy pointed to the welcome side of the Coast Guard boat plowing through the fog. Through a speaker, the CG officer ordered the ship's crew to surrender. The few that were still aboard appeared on deck with their hands over their heads. Nancy, Ned, and Bess told their stories to one of the CG officers aboard the ship. "We received your phone message, Mr. Drew," the officer said, "but we were already in the area checking out the offshore holding pool. We were heading out to inspect the ship when we saw your flare. We would have been here sooner, but we had to stop and pick up the Mona Watch carrying some of Joan Kim's colleagues who were trying to escape." The door opened on the deck, and two other officers brought out Joan Kim and took her to the ladder leading down to the Coast Guard boat. "Kim has a legitimate importing business that we were aware of," the officer told Nancy, "but we were sure we didn't know anything about her illegal side. Like you and your friends are true heroes." "What happened to the baby whale?" Bess asked. "We'll turn her over to some people who are specialized in whale behavior. They'll determine what's best for the calf. If it's healthy, it may be released, or maybe held until adult whales return to be released then." The Coast Guard picked up Katie's boat and towed it to a ship. When the CG finished questioning them, Nancy and her friends finally headed south toward the fishing pier where Katie, George, and Jenna waited. Ned docked the Ripper, and they all went into a seafood restaurant on the pier for dinner. Nancy, Ned, and Bess regaled the other three with their experiences aboard Joan Kim's boat. "Nancy, I can't thank you enough for solving the case," Katie said. "I can finally do my cruises, not worry about harassment or worse." "I appreciate your thanks," Nancy said, "but I'm not sure that the case is totally solved." "What do you mean?" Jen asked. "Well, we still don't know who trashed the Ripper and tampered with the bike," Nancy pointed out. "It wasn't Joan Kim or Jess. She didn't really seem to know anything about either one," Nancy said. "Then it must be Holt Scotto," Jenna concluded. "Both Kim and Scotto confessed to causing some of the trouble," Nancy said. "There would be no reason for them to hold back on those other two things." "I still don't like Andy Jason," George said. "What about him?" "I haven't ruled him out," Nancy said, "but he doesn't really seem to be trying to run Kate out of business. He seems to want to work with her. It doesn't make sense that he tried to hurt her, like with the bike accident." After dinner, they all boarded the Ripper for a cruise back to Katie's. "So you heard about our day," said George, joining her on the banquette. "How was yours? How'd the Burt go?" "Pretty well, actually," George said. Katie and Jenna treated it like a war, though. Kind of takes some of the fun out of it. "They're fierce competitors," Nancy observed. "That's what makes them champions." "Yeah, and Katie told me some of the stuff that happens, why they go at each other so hard," George said, lowering her voice. "They've got some kind of history together. Jenna was a regular World Team member until Katie came along. Katie was so good that she was moved into Jenna's place on the team, and Jenna became an alternate. So Jenna's trying to get back on the team, and Katie's trying to hold on to her place, Nancy concluded. No wonder their workouts are so tough. It's amazing they even speak to each other. Katie says teams come first, George said. That's why she invited Jenna down. It will help them get along better and keep pace. When they got back to land, they made their usual date for breakfast at Katie's and then hit her back. Bess fell asleep immediately, but Nancy's thoughts kept her awake. She was happy about solving the mystery of the baby whale. She still had work to do. I promised I'd help Katie, she told herself, and I'm going to. After hours of tossing and turning, she finally fell asleep. Nancy awoke the next morning with a jolt. Her mind was racing. She remembered the beginning of the note that was waiting for her when she and Bess got home the night of Bess's accident. So sorry your friend got hurt. There was only one person who could have known about Bess's injury and been able to get a note under this door before we got home, she mumbled. I'll go talk to Katie. She pulled on jeans and a lightweight yellow sweater. Then she wrote a note for Bess telling her where she was going. She ran the mile to Katie's house. When she got there, no one was home. George runs in the morning. They're probably all out on the bluff. She let herself in with the key Katie had lent her. She ran straight to Katie's office and rummaged through the drawers until she found a phone book. Then she dialed the phone company customer service representative. Hello, this is Katie Firestone, she said. I forgot to record a long-distance phone call I made yesterday. Could you give me the number? She wrote the number down, dialed it immediately, rang twice, and someone answered. Good morning, the voice said. Malone Motel. And that's the end of that chapter. See you later.